where are the coatings, and we also don't know very much about the potential for migration. So that means from nanoparticles to come out of the coating, like onto our hands, and also about how these coatings will break down over time. And then, of course, even after the consumer is done with the fridge and the fridge goes to recycling or to landfill, there's another question about waste stream. So where will the nanoparticles that are in the fridge go?
What we do know, on the other hand, is that the specific characteristics of nanoparticles make them very different from normal molecules. Are they dangerous? There is no definitive answer today. We are sadly lacking in surefire information concerning their real effects, even if we are sometimes using them to protect us. In the cosmetic sector, for example, nanoparticles are used in the composition of several sun creams. How should we view this?
There's a lot of use of nanoparticulate titanium dioxide as a way to have, a sun block that is invisible, doesn't leave a white paste on your face. That's something I would look at. The shape of those particles can really affect how they penetrate the skin, how they get into you. So I have 3 kids, all under the age of 8, and I don't think I would put some of these sunscreens on their skin because the particles, we just don't know enough about what happens to them, either on the person or after they get washed off and go into the environment. So I would wait till we know more about whether and when they're harmful.
Mikhail Ruko is of a different opinion, but his fears are centered around other consumer products.
The skin is designed historically to protect against penetration in a way or another. However, in the intestine basically is no protection, and so if we have a large amount of potentially harmful nanoparticles, there's no way to stop this. It's something that is a direct contact with the body, and they are concerned about short and long-term implications.
A warning of this nature, coming from someone who's supposed to be an unconditional nano-supporter, certainly gives food for thought, particularly as many food products may already be using nanoparticles. May is the operative word, as it's impossible to know just from reading the labels. Industry has no obligation to provide that information, and more often than not, no obligation to subject their nanoparticles to safety tests.
Cited quite extensive mobilization in the scientific world and among the public authorities. One conclusion is a matter of principle, and that is to say that there is no certainty toxicologically. First of all, because it's too early. We don't know the long-term effects. But at the same time, we're not going to wait until we do know the long-term effects before we act. And so we act on the exposure. And the idea is to say, let's apply the principle of precaution and implement measures which will allow us to control the levels of exposure in order to reduce any risks that are subsequently defined. But I agree with you, we're not in an ideal situation, with the ideal situation being that the harmlessness can be demonstrated.
It's a reassuring thought. The principle of precaution is appropriate. Its application even seems to have been anticipated by certain industries and laboratories. So everything is all right. Except, in practice, this principle of precaution is just that, a principle. It's by no means a law, only an encouragement for prudence. Everyone can do what they like.
Back in 2004, the United Kingdom's Royal Society, which is the world's oldest scientific institution, said based on what they knew then, nanoparticles should go through new safety assessment before they were included in products, and that they should be labelled so that people had an informed choice about whether to use those products. But neither of those two things has happened, and that's why we think we'd be better off taking a precautionary approach. So until nanoparticles pass safety testing, we don't think they should be included in products. And after they pass safety testing, we think they should be labelled so that someone can make a choice about whether or not they want a nano fridge or not.
Knowing that we know nothing is not very reassuring, especially when some people use the word nano just for marketing purposes. One case in Germany made the news. A spray, Magic Nano, was banned after several people were intoxicated. No to nanos? Not at all. In reality, the spray had nothing nano about it. It was just claiming to be an innovative product. So as consumers, how can we know what's what? Ideally, we should be able to distinguish between what's real and what's fake. But clearly this is impossible today. And so it's not surprising that some people are getting paranoid. Here we have the pilot reactor for producing carbon nanotubes. These tubes are a few nanometers or a few tens of nanometers in diameter, and a few microwaves or tens of microwaves long. The nanotube comes out through this tube to reach the packaging stage. We've developed a system of safety valves that prevent any nanotubes from being released outside. You're producing in an open environment? The whole process is not at all open. It's all closed, including the packaging. The nanotubes never see the atmosphere, and so the workspace and the people who are working here are absolutely not exposed. So we'll take a reading by the packaging system. And here we can see that there are between 12,000 and 13,000 nanoparticles per cubic centimeter, which is not very much for a normal atmosphere, because above the ring road in Paris you find concentrations of nanoparticles 3 or 4 times as high.
Une nouvelle voiture se présente. En fait, c'est 86 000 nanoparticules, 140 000.
n'est pas réaliste de penser que chaque
It's not realistic to think that every nanoparticle is safe. It's quite simply impossible.
doit être achevé,
What should be done is that the products generated by nanotechnology should be made safe,
soit sûr,
that the manufacturing processes in the factories and the intermediate stages should be safe,
passage intermédiaire,
and that the product, for example, the textiles you were talking about, should be safe when it's being used
du produit
and at the end of its life.
soit sûr.
Yes, that would indeed be better. And I'm also in favor of banishing hunger around the world, ending all wars, and for everyone to love each other.
Do you think we've learned from the mistake of the past? You were speaking about asbestos.
Yes, yeah. I mean, no, we won't have another asbestos, but we still have to be careful and vigilant to make sure that doesn't happen. But it seems most unlikely that anything like that will happen.
Nous avons une chance.
We're fortunate in terms of nanosciences and nanotechnologies that we're in a period after the major problems linked to nuclear power and after the major problems of GMOs. So in a way, civil society is learning, as is, I would say, the international institutional environment and industry in general.
We're fortunate. If we've learned anything, it's that we have to be wary. What do they think at the AFSET, the French Agency for Sanitary Safety in the Environment and at Work? It has produced several reports on the impact of nanomaterials. David Vernez acts as their spokesman.
Je crois que c'est il y a environ une dizaine d'années.
I think it was about 10 years ago, just as the first nanomaterials were being developed, that scientists began to show signs of concern to underline the fact that an enormous amount of money